turn it off. Okay.
Hello and welcome to the 5th edition of Made in Minnesota, the show that highlights immigrants that are doing amazing things in our community here. Today, I have Dr. Ada with me.
Hello, thanks for having me today, guys.
It's such a pleasure having you, Dr. Ada.
Thank you.
All right, so with me, the usual suspect, Benjamin Ose. Ben, how are you, man?
I actually don't have a mic, but I'm doing good. I actually thought you guys were gonna be the one going back and forth, but actually can go turn around and.
No, man. I can't do this without my co-pilot.
Well,
he's getting his mic together.
Yeah, you are really good at it. So.
I think that's probably like the first time I ever gotten a compliment from Ben.
Ben's always hiding his compliments from you.
Wow.
I know.
Wow. So it's like that, huh?
Yeah. I don't even know what to do with it. I just write it on my resume.
I've been complimenting you ever since we met.
That's like from childhood. I always thought you were a skillful person.
Oh, all right. Thanks. Appreciate it. But today, though, however, Dr. Ada is a pediatrician right here in our local Tree City. She's been doing some amazing stuff. But before we get to it, Doc, how was your drive here?
Wasn't bad at all. We actually don't live too far from here, so but we haven't been to this area before, so kind of coming here wasn't too bad. 15 minutes drive, we got here.
All right.
Easy.
That's not too bad. You
yeah.
know, usually we get the whole Minnesota construction in the summertime, and it's supposed to take 15, but it took 45 minutes.
Well, with actually the Super Bowl coming up, there's a lot more. The Larry Hill Tunnel is being closed for a while.
That's true. Downtown for sure.
Yeah, so they are cleaning up, trying to have a good image.
But the road wasn't bad today, so that was pretty good. Like no traffic at all. It's Saturday, so no one's going to work like that morning
I
rush.
suppose all the cabin goers are already at their cabins. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. So, how long have you lived in Minnesota?
I've lived in Minnesota for almost 7 years now, but it's been broken up in pieces because I was here for medical school for 4 years, and then I moved to Chicago for 3 years, and then I came back, and I'm going on to 2 years and plus of being here now. So
okay, the second time around.
Second time around, yes.
Anyone who ever lives in Minnesota and come back, that person is a lifer in Minnesota.
Yes,
right?
yes. I love Minnesota, to put it that way, because I used to live in New York before coming to Minnesota, and when I first came to Minnesota, I was like, what is this place? Why is everyone so nice? Like, I would get onto the bus and guy was like, good morning. I was like, what is so good about the morning? Calm down. Because, in New York, people are so aggressive, and it's true. So then coming here, I had to realize, okay, people are actually nice, and this is actually the way people are here. So calm down yourself, too, and, just imbibe what's going on. And it's been great. Moved to Chicago, but then came back because I met my husband here, so came back to, start a family here.
Shout out to Dr. Ada's husband. Can we name drop?
Well, you already did. That's the title right now.
All right, so we title dropped.
Yeah, he's here in the studio, so shout out to him.
All right. Thanks for joining us in the studio as well. All right. Yeah, so Chicago, Minneapolis, Chicago, and back. And I know you've lived elsewhere as well, outside of Minnesota.
Yes.
So, this is the way I see it. I mean, Chicago is really the older brother of Minnesota, really.
For sure, yeah.
They're not quite as nice, but, they're no New York either.
Definitely. Actually, part of the reason why I went to Chicago was I loved Minnesota, being Midwest, but I thought I wanted that city feel again. So then I moved to Chicago. And then you know what? And I just felt like, I miss Minnesota a lot more. So I ended up coming back here. And it's been great so far. I definitely don't have any regrets.
All right. So all the way from Nigeria, right?
Yes.
Then from Nigeria, you moved to New York before.
Yes.
Right? So tell us a little bit about how that it's intriguing. Nigeria is known, as far as from a West Africa perspective, is being known as the mini New York, to say, the for sure the hustle and bustle. For sure, it's quick city, think on your feet. So was it still a big difference, culture shock wise, as far as moving to New York?
I mean, yes, definitely moving to New York. The difference between Nigeria and where I lived in Nigeria, because I lived in Abuja at the time, and New York is that Abuja is a little calmer. New York is all hustle and bustle, right? And so, like, hopping on the train, hopping on the bus, kind of trying to get to where you are that quick. People huffing and puffing, shoving you around. That was a culture shock. Definitely the winter was a culture shock, but nothing compares to Minnesota winter. But the winter in New York was a culture shock, and like just how people, there's just like so many people in a closed space. That was a culture shock for me too. But it ended up not bad at all, because where I went to school was in one spot, like it was in the Bronx. So a lot of the people that I met there, were in that closed, confined space, fortunately. So I didn't have to be outside too much in the hustle and bustle of New York all the time.
What's besides the weather-wise, what's other culture differences do you realize from an African country to essentially New York?
Well, things I can think about. Okay, so when I was in college, so I went to a college called Fordham. It was in the Bronx, and it's kind of a gated college, so it's not a typical college, right? But you can still come out and do what you need to do outside in the city. But I was so shocked by like college and their drinking habits. Things that were not used to me. I wasn't used to at all, I was 16 when I came to college, and that in itself was just very different. So to me, I think that was a big culture shock, because my school was a big drinking school in New York, yeah.
It's so funny. Here when they say, at least school parties, when they say party, it's more of alcohol. It's centered around alcohol. Back home, it's parties, actually food.
And dancing.
Around food and dancing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and actually, one of my when I came to high school, and when you are in the secondary school in Ghana, there's more like inter college kind of sports that you go to, and I was expecting same thing here. With when they had the track and field. I was like, well, what's missing? And the only fun thing that we're having was like food fights in the canteen.
You're like, what is this?
And I'm like,
like, why
you guys
do we
are
eat
throwing
this?
food away, man. Don't do that.
Yeah, they did that at college too. It was kind of weird, but then you kind of get used to it. So.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It's definitely amazing. So, what do you miss most?
I miss food. I miss all the Nigerian food. I mean, name it, suya. I love suya. Nigerian shawarma, another one you get here. I miss those for sure, like points and kill. All those things. But definitely I miss my family. Majority of my family is still back home. So when I get an opportunity to go to Nigeria, I really cherish it. A lot of my friends actually that went to school with me in Nigeria have who may have come to school abroad, have gone back to Nigeria. So I look forward to seeing them when I go back too. So that's something I definitely miss.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Wow. So why the transition? I suppose your parents had a big role to play in this, but from Sistine to the U.S., what made you or your parents or whoever helped you make that decision? What made you decide to make that journey?
Oh, this is actually an interesting story. So before I came to America, I actually had gone to Ghana. I got into Legon, and I actually had gone to Kumasi.
At age 16?
Yes, I got into.
Were you like a little genius or
something? No, I definitely wasn't.
You figured your way out very quickly.
I definitely wasn't, but I did get into those two schools, and I was going to go to medical school.
People start Legon at age 21.
But I went there and I actually loved Ghana. It was beautiful, amazing. People were very, very nice. And we were going to go, but my dad felt like it would be a better place for me to go to New York. I have family in New Jersey, and it's not that far. So he just thought it would be a better fit for me to go there in terms of like my life goals or wanting to be a doctor at the time. So I went to New York. Here we are. It turned out okay. It was a good decision, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's definitely gonna turn out better than.
So when you came to New York, what grade did you transition to?
Oh no! When I came to New York, I went straight to college.
Okay.
So I went straight to college. I actually lived in the dorms, and I was a resident assistant for the last 3 years of college. So at least that helped me in terms of like housing and food and things like that. I think for me, like giving advice to anyone who's trying to get to college from Nigeria, Ghana, anywhere else in West Africa or in Africa, like help yourself out, help your parents out. If you can get a job in school, like I feel for me, like I had no problems being a resident assistant. I loved, that job, and so that helped me with housing a lot. So.
I mean, as far as the culture difference, it's like alone. I'm just going to go on a limb and say that helps a lot as far as getting a job and knowing how to interact.
Exactly,
with people as well.
exactly. But I think like for me, it's just I've always been a pretty open person. So meeting people is not difficult to just kind of, hey, say hey, hello, just get into the mix. And obviously you have to be observant too and see what the crowd is that you're going into, so you kind of know how to approach people. But for me, it wasn't hard to do that. I remember being definitely the only African person on the residency team, but it was,
It baffles me though. You were only 16. So on average, the average freshman was 2 years older than you are.
Yeah, I remember being one of the youngest in my class.
Being not only the African American, but being the only African in your class.
Yeah.
And hardly know anybody in there, and you're just gonna dive in and make friends and somehow make this work.
Yeah, I think like the way that happened. Okay, well, first of all, there was a kid from my secondary school in Nigeria who was at the school before me, and he was a friend of mine. So I remember thinking, okay, Tony is in the school with me. Shout out to Tony. He's in the school with me, so at least I have that one person I can connect with, and he can show me the ropes. So that was helpful, to be honest. But in my class, for sure, I was the only like African or something. And I think like it's just one of those things where you just see the opportunity, like, okay, now I'm here, let me just get the most out of this experience and talk to people, reach out to people, and get involved in the school and the community and the Bronx. I actually got involved a lot with the Bronx itself, so that was very helpful. I did a lot of like boys and girls club kind of things in the Bronx, so that was fun. Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
So now you are a full-on doctor. Before we even get into that, what drove the decision of becoming a doctor?
What drove the decision? Well, my parents would tell you that when I was 4, someone bought me some doctor kit, and I was like taking everybody's blood pressure, and they were like, "Oh, my child is going to be a doctor," because like African friends always do stuff like that. But I think when I was actually in college, when I was in secondary school in Nigeria, I thought I was going to be an architect, because I was very good with technical drawing, and I liked that a lot. But then I also realized that I really like taking care of people. And so it was easy to make. My mom is a nurse, so I've been around medical lingo, medical talk, and she really took care of a lot of people in our community then. So it wasn't too difficult for me to make the decision to be in healthcare and then be a doctor ultimately. And I think I had a lot of teachers that encouraged me when I was in secondary school, so it made things a lot easier. When I got into school. Now, the decision to be a pediatrician was a little bit different. Like, I actually thought I was going to be an OBGYN, right? So deliver babies and help women with fertility problems. But what ended up happening was when I got into medical school and I would go to the operating room and they would do the deliveries, I always wanted to know how the baby was doing. I didn't want to stay there and stitch anybody back up. So then I figured to myself,
see, I would run just from the sight of the blood alone.
Yeah.
Would just scare me off.
I know. It scares lots of people. I actually didn't mind the blood. What I definitely realized I didn't like was I didn't really like standing for hours in the operating room. That was just tiring. But then I always wanted to know how the baby was doing. So I figured, I think maybe I'm meant to be a pediatrician, not an OBGYN doctor.
Could you break it down a little bit for us as far as what a pediatrician does?
Okay, no problem.
What it does and how they help people. So most people, I assume, are like myself. When I hear the term, kid doctor.
Yes,
right, is what comes to mind.
Yes.
But why is a kid doctor different from any other doctor?
Well, a pediatrician is a doctor, a physician who takes care of babies from children from newborn to 18 years old. Some people go up to 21. I see babies from I see kids from newborn to 18 in my clinic, and so you just help take care of them in terms of preventative help. So you teach them, help educate their parents on how to take care of the child in terms of their health care, their hygiene. You also help to diagnose disease. You help the management of the disease. You dispense. You help to give them medication to kind of help treat the disease, and then you refer them to subspecialists who may help them with specific parts of the disease or specific organs that are failing or something like that in terms of in the pediatric world. So that's 0 to 18-year-old child. So you deal with just in that spot. So if anyone comes to me and they're 25, I'm like, I don't know your disease. But no, I still help my friends who are older, but my focus is on the children.
I'm sure you have some good stories about people coming to you with the different diseases. Like,
yeah, what is this? What is this? And the most common one is, what is this rash? And I'm like, you're 37, I don't know what the rash is.
You're way above the age, man.
Yeah, no, I can't help you. No.
So from a social standpoint,
Yes.
We do from, your profession, we do hear that, the cost of Medicare is getting out of hand.
Yes.
There's the year, whatever that is, we're not going to be able to pay. What's the cause of that from a doctor's perspective? Are we heavily reliant on, medicine as, even where we don't need it, or...
Well, what I can tell you that is different between medicine in America and medicine back home is medicine back home, the doctor tells you what to do and you go do it, right? Or there's a lot of, I think I have this, I go to the pharmacy and the pharmacy gives you the medication. Here, there's a lot more, like, the doctor asks the patient, like, how can I help you? Like, and even if we diagnose what's wrong with you, we give you options. So you kind of have a hand in deciding how we're going to manage you and treat you, right? But I think America also, or in the Western world, we also push a lot of preventative medicine, and that may be part of the reason why it looks like all these numbers are skyrocketing. Fortunately for children, a lot of children, it's they have it set up where children get seen for free. You just have to sign up with like the most state or federal, the insurance that's common. And children get seen for free. So in my case, I don't have, and to be very honest, like doctors, we try to focus on our craft, and in terms of the insurance thing, except you make the extra effort to understand it and be part of it, you may not really know all the hullabaloo that's kind of going on with it. But I definitely do see cases, especially of recent, where some of my patients can't see me anymore because they had to switch their insurance, or like I see new patients and they say I have to switch my insurance, and so that's why they're coming to us. So the details, to be very honest, like I'm not an expert on them. Yeah. So, but I see anybody that walks through my door. So.
So how about this other social issue as far as growing up in Ghana?
Nigeria.
For me, growing up in Ghana, and for you, Nigeria, maybe growing up. Let's take diseases like ADD, right? Mm-hmm. There wasn't anything like, well, you have ADD, so let's put you on Zoloft, whatever it is out there these days.
Mm-hmm.
Here though, it's a little different. So that's one of the things that it's kind of hard to tell if kids are overly medicated here, or maybe kids are underly, if that's a word, if are not medicated enough at all in Africa,
back home.
West Africa.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question because so obviously growing up, like the child that never sat down, like you would get like beaten, right?
You get whipped.
You would get whooped, like seriously
beat the ADD out of you.
Exactly. But I think here, what it is more people, we're able to do a lot more diagnosis here. Mm-hmm. So from very young ages, you would hear, you would see that child at the moment, like, this child cannot sit down. And to make the diagnosis, not to bore you guys, but to make the diagnosis, they have to be like hyperactive at home and hyperactive in like another setting. So usually like daycare or like in school. And there are like all these forms we give the daycare provider and the parents to fill out, and you kind of have to establish that the kid is really, really hyperactive. So for us here, because we have like more of a systematic way of diagnosing it, it's easier for us to pick up more people who I would say truly have it. Now, is it over medicated? Probably, right? Because I mean, for one reason or the other, we do have parents who come to the clinic and say, "Can you put my child on this medicine?" You'll be very surprised. I have more parents who want the kid on the medicine than parents who don't. But for me, when I see children that the parents are concerned that they may have ADD or ADHD, which is like, this hyperactivity, I usually work side and side with a behavioral therapist, and we have another session with the family and the behavioral therapist where I'm not involved, and they will actually break down, talk to the parents and fill out all sorts of forms and try and figure out if the child really does have ADD, ADHD, or is it also like anxiety and like all these other things going into it. So when we've come together as a team to make the decision, my job or my role is to manage the medication, right? So I start the medication, I see the patient often, and we go from there. So I think it's just different. It's different of cultures, it's different and environments, and what the norm is. I know some of my friends in Nigeria who are also doctors who wish that all those medicines are actually available, but they're not, right? So here it looks like we're treating everybody well because we have the ability, we have the knowledge, we have the ability, we can diagnose easily. But back home it's not as easy. So
the $1 million question.
Yes.
How can we fix the African medicine?
I wish I had the $1 million answer, but I mean, I don't know. It has to be like I think some of it has to be like a grassroots effort. Some of it has to be just one person starting something and everyone else kind of doing the little bit that they can. But I mean, there's so many illnesses and there's so many medications we wish we had. And so in Africa, in terms of where we get those medicines, very different from here. But it's really tough. I actually haven't, to be honest, I haven't had so much experience working as a medical professional back home. Okay. My husband has, but he's not talking today. Yeah. But I think like it's.
Don't worry, next time we'll
next time you get him on the couch. But I think it's not very easy. It's not very simple. I know lots of people, especially lots of millennials, are working towards trying to improve the healthcare system back home the little that they can, and I hope to one day be able to go back and actually work with some of these people. So it's gradual. Rome wasn't built in a day, so we'll try and figure out how we can also help for sure back home.
All right. So obviously, as far as childbirth, taking care of a child from a medical perspective is much different. For me when I was growing up in West Africa, and came here, witnessed, how it's done. It's, different. Very different.
Yes.
Here, right?
Yes.
So let's say for the, immigrant that's moved from wherever it is, Ghana, Africa, Europe, whatever it is, plugged into the system.
Yeah.
Something much different, right? And you come here and then, the system is different. What's, the general advice that you'd give to these people that is it seek help? Is there something that you could do to essentially ensure that you do have a safe birth and a safe upbringing as far as from a medical standpoint of a baby?
I think what it is okay. So taking myself for instance, right? So I'm an African person who's a doctor in America who gave birth to a child in America, right? So I have information, I have the understanding of taking care of children from back home, but I'm an American. I have information. So at the end of the day, it's when I'm taking care of my child, and let's say my mother who came from Africa Nigeria is helping me take care of my child, I have to decide like if she's doing something that's not technically what I would recommend to my children, how much of harm would that cause to my child? So for instance, there are lots of practices that people do back home when you have a newborn. So in some cultures, they would rub the child from head to toe in palm oil, right? And so some people may see that here, like one of my colleagues that's not African can see that and be like, oh, don't do that, that's very horrible or something. But in honesty, part of the reason why they do that is because there's some palm oil is used to make soap, right? So some of the properties of the palm oil actually would just help to clean the child, and it's not a big deal. So if I see a patient and they tell me they're doing some practices, I always want to know, okay, what is the potential harm to the child? If there's no real potential harm and this is your culture or something like that, like I just tell them, okay, you know, be careful, don't do this, don't do that. Typical example, yesterday actually at work, I saw a newborn that was about 2 weeks old, and the family is from Mexico. And typically when newborns are born, their nails are very long. So this baby had very long nails. And so I told the mom, okay, like I would normally do for any of my patients, oh, clip the nails, this is the way you do it or whatever. And then the mom looked at me, she's like, no, in my culture, we don't do that. And I was like, okay, no big deal. And you know what she had? She had mittens for her child. Okay? We say clip the nails so the baby doesn't scratch their eye or scratch their face, but this baby has long nails but has mittens on, so there's no big deal, you know. I don't have to kind of be like, you know, yelling at her or like reprimanding her for not clipping the baby's nails.
Cultural sensitivity.
Exactly.
I guess it's very important.
Very, very important. Yeah. Exactly. Especially living in somewhere like America where there are different cultures, you know, that live in under one, you know, country or state.
So if I hear you right, you're saying there's basically not a formula and that there's not one way one thing helps. It's just a matter of weighing the risk and seeing if, you know, if this behavior continues, if there's a potential harm to the kid.
Yes,
or
exactly.
not.
I think that, well, for me particularly, that's how I practice, right? So if I see a family and they tell me what they do, and that way it actually helps the family to be more open to me or what they're doing at home. If not, there could be little things they're doing that could harm the child that they won't tell me because they may feel judged by me. So I just tell parents that, you know, try and do what's best for your child. I give them my recommendations, and then, you know, hopefully they take some of that home when they take care of their child.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So let's switch it up just a little bit, you know, to talk about what Dr. Ada actually does for fun.
What do I do for fun? So... what do I do for fun? Well, like I said, I have a 4-month-old at home, so right now a lot of fun things have to do with, you know, taking care of her and playing with her. But I recently started a YouTube channel.
Congrats.
Thank you. Actually started a YouTube channel. It had been an idea that I had over a year, but then it obviously, you know, as things happen or as God would have it, I launched the YouTube channel like a few weeks to delivering my daughter. And the goal of the YouTube channel, which is called Ask Dr. Ada, is basically I'm growing with my daughter as a pediatrician. I'm learning things, you know, but then I'm also utilizing some of the things that I've learned as a pediatrician to take care of her. But then every child is different. Every pregnancy is different. So like some of the things I tell my patients are not working. So, you know, you have to, you know, sometimes I listen to my mom, you know, they bring some of that cultural thing back, and it's not good, like I said, it's not going to harm the child. So I use that, and sometimes it works. Like how I can sleep, so things like that. So that's what I do for fun right now. My channel is something that is growing gradually, and just, you know, I don't know, that's the fun I can think of right now that I do.
Ideally, how would you like to bring your child up? Is the American culture or the Nigerian culture?
Well, it's not easy to say, oh, you want to bring your child up with 100% Nigerian culture because the child lives in America, is going to go to American school. But I know my family and my husband, we've talked about how we would really like our daughter to be able to speak some of her language. My husband is Yoruba and I'm Igbo. Those are two different tribes in Nigeria, so we speak two completely different languages. I am not fluent in my language. I can understand it a lot, but I don't speak it perfectly. My husband speaks Yoruba perfectly, so we already talked about how, like, I think it would be great for him to talk to her in Yoruba a lot, because she's going to go to school, she's going to learn English, but if she never learns Yoruba from us, she's going to miss out on that. So so that's, you know, imbibing that culture that way. I mean, she's going to eat amala, she's going to eat egusi. Do you understand this kind of thing? So
that's right.
So keeping it real.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But how early can you start the kids with the local food though?
I would say wait till maybe about like 9 months to 1 year.
Okay.
You know, baby food we recommend starting like 4 to 6 months, ideally 6 months. But as they get a little bit older, young children love slimy food. So things like swallow, fufu, okra, they do very, very well with it.
Okay.
So I would say maybe just to Just stick to like after a year old, then you can, let them try everything. Don't make it too spicy though. But you can let them try anything, yeah.
Right, that's good.
One of the trend that we're seeing these days, I don't know, that's just because people have just started keeping better record, but a lot of kids are developing allergies for one reason or the other, especially peanut. I mean, is there a medical reason for this, and how do you prevent your son, daughter, newborn from developing these allergies? Because obviously they're not born with it, right? So
yeah, that's a very good question, because so a lot of people in the allergy community, there's actually like specialists, they're called allergy and immunology doctors. For a long time they would say things like, don't introduce peanuts, fish, eggs to children and honey before the age of 1. Now, there have been some studies that have shown that the children who actually were introduced to peanuts in other countries when they were younger, around 6 months, they have a lower risk of getting peanut allergies. So this is very new, like, less than 5 years, these studies have come back out. So now the allergy doctors are trying to, tell us that we should tell parents to introduce peanuts earlier. Now, if you have a strong family history of peanut allergy, that child, I wouldn't recommend that they start at like 6 months. I would say still wait till 1 year. But if there's no big issue, as the child is being introduced to baby food, I would say like around 7 to 9 months old, they can maybe do like the little peanut toast and see how it goes.
Does it really matter if the child is from an African descent or from European descent?
In terms of like the allergy?
As far as allergy-wise?
I don't know. I don't
DNA specific?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I've seen too much of a correlation where like more African American children or Caucasian children have a certain allergy more than the other, but I do know it does run in families. So families that have a lot of allergies in their like a father who has like asthma, you tend to have children who may also have asthma, or who may also have like seasonal allergies, or like even eczema. So those 3 things actually run together. So that's what I would say, but I don't know too much. I'm not sure too much about like Caucasian and African families.
Okay,
separate.
Let's get a little controversial right now.
Oh, should we? Oh, okay, sure.
Vaccination.
Yes.
It's becoming such a popular subject, and everybody on the other side is so passionate about their take on it.
Yes.
From a doctor's perspective, what are your thoughts?
Please vaccinate your child.
Just like that.
Like, I almost should just say that and stop. But it's so interesting because, like, many years ago, right, so our grandparents, I would say the people that were grandparents and great-grandparents here, they were lining up to vaccinate their children against something called polio. Okay? Right. Now, there's no polio anywhere in the world except parts of Nigeria. Yeah, there's polio in parts of Nigeria and parts of India. Polio is actually almost eradicated. But there's some people who did not believe in the vaccine and they didn't vaccinate their children in northern Nigeria, and there's still polio in some parts there. So I think a lot of it is because we don't see those diseases anymore, people don't think they're still around. But what's happening in the world now is that the world is becoming so much more of a global village. People are traveling to America from all parts of the world, or traveling to Africa from all parts of the world. And people in some of these places don't have vaccines. And now, because so many Americans are choosing not to vaccinate their children, those diseases are coming back. Now, let's bring it back home. Minnesota, measles. So in the community here, in the Somali community, there was a doctor who used to be a doctor and released an article in London several years ago that was actually a fake article saying that the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the MMR vaccine, gives you autism. So that man released that article he published that paper in a very renowned medical journal called The Lancet in England. So everyone was like, oh my God, the MMR vaccine gives autism. But then they found out that he lied. In the article, and he used fake studies, and he used fake numbers, and he lied. But before anyone could say anything, like, that had become worldwide news that this vaccine causes autism. So people stopped getting the vaccine. So now that man actually came to Minnesota, not that long ago. He came to Minnesota and he spoke to the Somali community, and he said, you know what, your children are becoming autistic because you're giving them this MMR vaccine. And so a high population of Somali families don't do the MMR vaccine. Like their community leaders told them to not give the MMR vaccine. And so now.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I heard that story.
Yeah,
though.
because on the radios and other news outlet, they pass it off as a cultural behavior that the Somali or that some African communities do not believe in.
Well, that's what happened. That man came to Minnesota and spoke to the Somali leaders, and they decided to talk. You know, when their leaders talk to them, they do what they're told. Right. So I have patients who come to my clinic. They don't even know about any other vaccine. They just say, "Is the kid going to get MMR?" And we say, "Yes, they're 1 year, they're due," and they'll say, "No, we don't want that." Wow. And so that measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine that they refuse to get because they're afraid of autism. That's what led measles to come into the Somali community in Minnesota, and that's why we've had so many cases of measles so far in this year alone. So it's something you need to vaccinate your children.
Yeah. I see amen to that.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I think someone just asked a question.
Yeah.
How's autism members pro? Let me make sure. Go ahead. Let me check.
All right. Well, why don't you check into that question? Maybe I just kind of want to pivot a little bit and talk about something different, but we can always come back to that question.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as personal development, right? Coming from Nigeria to Ghana, I mean, Nigeria to Ghana, coming from Nigeria to US.
Yes.
Obviously, there were some sort of struggles.
Yes.
There's some sort of triumph.
Mm-hmm.
How did that background prepare you, either put you in a better spot to compete, because doing what you're doing at the level that you're doing is no joke, right? So how was that either a help or a hindrance? And if it was a hindrance, how did you overcome that?
I think it was a help. I think what helped, what I mean by it was a help was people looked at me as, this, like you guys said, this young 17-year-old girl, knows what she wants to do. When I getting into medical school was very difficult. Actually, when I was in college, the director of the International Students Office told me that, and he was like a very old man. He was like, all the years I've been here, he's never seen an international person go to medical school. And when he told me that, I don't think he meant to like break my goal. Yeah, I didn't think he meant to break my spirit, but I thought about it, and a part of me felt like, okay, let me actually have plan B. So when I was in college, I had 2 majors. I was biology and economics because my school was good for economics. So I kind of was like, okay, just in case it doesn't work out. But I already had that as a goal. And nothing was perfect, like I didn't get the perfect, kind of tried to make sure you're helping out the community. You make sure you're trying to make sure you're helping out, like you're volunteering, and you're having other experiences that makes you like a well-rounded doctor. So I think when I was going and applying to medical school, they saw that as a plus for me. So like I have the experience of living in a different country. I have the experience of working with the Boys and Girls Club in the Bronx. I have the experience of reaching out to I was a tutor. Those kind of things kind of added to my grades and let them see that I wasn't just all about like research or all about biology. So I think a lot of people think like if you do 100% and you get 100% on all your exams, but you don't know how to communicate with someone else, or you don't know how to communicate with a family or with the patients, like that will get you far. But it really doesn't. They're looking for, a lot of times the medical schools are looking for like a well-rounded individual that brings something else to the field.
Wow, that's very insightful, actually. So the world is moving from study. Obviously, it's important to study.
Yes, I mean, of
obviously, but you got to be able to communicate.
Yep,
you got to be able to relate, and that's very insightful.
Yeah, for sure. Because at the end of the day, I remember when I got into medical school. The interviewer, we just had the most exciting interview, just talking about simple things about Nigerian food and things like that. And the fact that I was able to relate, my experience from being back home and my culture to this Caucasian lady who never had experienced anything like that. I think we had a bond where she felt like, this girl has to come to our school. So.
All right. So we'll go back to Ben and I know that we have a Facebook question. So.
Yeah, actually, this is an Instagram
question.
Charles wanted to ask back to the autism numbers.
Yes.
Like, how were those numbers before and post immunization? Like, were those numbers higher or?
You mean like? I'm not quite sure what the question is asking. So
Well,
the
is he
autism
asking
in the
numbers.
Somalian community, like, do you know the numbers in it before the?
Well, I don't know. I don't know the numbers, right?
Okay.
But I can tell you that what they were worried about, what the Somali community was worried about, was when they lived in Somalia, they felt like they didn't have cases of autism, and then when they came to America, like Minnesota has so many East Africans outside East Africa, they felt like the numbers got higher here. Well, what I always tell parents and these patients when I see them is that autism probably was still there. It's not like it wasn't there. It's more of we are able to better diagnose it here, right? So we are able to diagnose it early. But a lot of times in African culture, we may see it and someone will say something like, "Oh, this child is possessed," or "This child has something." Now that I'm
he's just not a good
exactly,
student.
he's not a good talker or something
Actually,
like
that's
that.
my excuse though. So yeah.
Because
We're not buying it anymore. Like.
Mom and Dad, it wasn't that I wasn't studying.
You were possessed, huh?
Maybe
I know,
autism
that-
played a part.
That food that you ate at your auntie's place, aren't you?
When we told you not to eat when you go to the
exactly.
neighbor's house, right? No, but I think it's just that. I've actually had cases where kids, we can't diagnose, we can't give the MMR vaccine until the child is 1. So you get it twice, like at 1 and at 4 years old. You can see signs of autism before a kid is 1. So then you can use that and tell the parent, like, look, like we haven't even given them the MMR vaccine, but we can already start seeing signs. So that's kind of like how I explain it to parents too, that it's not just this one vaccine that caused it, but
we are way behind with when it comes to raising our kids back home, but I think they are catching up now. A lot of education is going on, especially with the social media.
Yeah,
and people trying to figure out. So I'm really proud of what's going on, but we can do better though.
for sure.
So back to the personal development topic here.
Yes.
Obviously moving from a different country to whatever country, another country is daunting, by itself alone. What's your biggest advice to someone who is, the stage that you were probably 10, 15 years ago, trying to moved here, trying to make something out of your life? It doesn't necessarily have to be a doctor, it could be anything. What's the one thing that this person should keep in mind as far as only if I keep my eye on the ball, if I did this and that, my odds of becoming what I want to become is almost guaranteed?
That's a very good question. I think what people should think about is when you come to a foreign place, you have to be open, right? You have to be open, even if you don't know exactly what your goals are. If you do know what your goals are, try and seek people that can help you achieve those goals and talk to people. If you don't talk to people, you may never know what's out there. If you can't live in a bubble, So go out there, try and make sure you're not hanging out with the wrong people that you're not, in line with, who don't have the same goals or have the same plans as you. If you do follow the people who do have the same goals and aspirations as you, they will help you. They will, get a mentor. Those people that have the same goals as you would also may be able to help you get a mentor. And then just go from there and just be perseverant, be disciplined. I remember when I was in medical school, there were so many beautiful Saturdays on the summers where I was on the bus going to the library and everyone else looked like they were going to Lake Calhoun or something. I remember vividly, and I was just going to the library at University of Minnesota and I was like, one day this is going to be over. But I did it, right? And now life is different. But if you don't stick to the guns and kind of stick, if you don't stick to what you plan to do and don't stick to your goals and aspirations and just be open to learning new things, it'll be tough for you. So that's what I encourage people to do.
All right. So I hear sacrifice, make those sacrifices.
Yes.
From the beginning, Lake Calhoun is always going to be there.
Exactly. Yeah, make the sacrifices early.
All right. So personally, now that you've reached, your milestone as far as being a doctor, enjoying it, you have a YouTube show going, giving advice. What's the next step for Dr. Ada?
That's an excellent question. You have good questions, man. Richie, all the good questions. I think for me, I've been thinking about just that, like, what's my next goal? I've gotten to this, peak that I've, worked so hard for all these years. I think a lot of it still is just educating our community. The whole essence of the channel was to educate millennials, so essentially people just like me, just without a medical degree. So that was the goal to start the channel, and everyone's on social media now and on the internet, and when you have good information, you also have bad information. So I just thought, I felt like starting up the channel would let people see someone just like them in their age bracket who has the medical information. And I think I look forward to being able to like go back home to Nigeria or Ghana and like talk to people, like talk in schools, communities, at functions. I look forward to, in the future being able to do like maybe like either young people or young women or young millennial summits where, people like me, me being a doctor, someone else who's any other kind of like industry, like, engineers, like media people kind of come together and, empower younger people too. Those are things that I look forward to do in the future. So, yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. I feel like you answered like my next 3 questions already. I was gonna ask how do you help your community? Obviously, you do a lot more than helping your community.
Yeah, she's got everything all fired up.
Wow, that is amazing. So, Ben, did you have another question from our listeners?
Yeah. So Charles again, he said, I have a friend who's trying to get into neurosurgery. She talked about the negative culture and racism in getting the resources and mentorship. What is your experience with that and throughout your academics?
That's a very good question too. I personally didn't have any, racism or racist situation directed at me. But I did feel at times when there were opportunities that weren't offered to me. And I think some of it is grace from God and like some wisdom to knowing that, okay, you know what, that wasn't offered to me, but my own experience is on its way. Now, with the advent of like social media and the internet and Facebook, there are actually like a lot of groups on Facebook that you can join, of like either African doctors or African people interested in medicine, different things. You can punch in any names and you'll find them. And because I'm part of a couple of them, and you would see like people would always post, of openings for volunteer opportunities or openings for come to this fair or come to this conference or something like that. But a lot of this too, you have to do the work yourself. You have to do the research and try and figure out how you can get into some of these groups yourself. But in terms of racism, I didn't personally face that, but when I was in residency, I remember feeling like there were opportunities that weren't offered to me, and then I heard about them later. So I just worked hard at where I was, because I knew that where I was still kind of going towards my goal, and I just stuck to my thing. So.
Well, what about like your career right now too? Like, are you facing any obstacles in terms of things that will make you move forward?
No, I think like a lot of times when people feel like they're facing obstacles against them, it may also be that definitely there will be those obstacles, but I feel like for me it's more of, there are obstacles, yes, but I'm still pushing, right? I'm still pushing to not be broken down or not be stopped by them. I mean, every day in my job, when I walk into the room and there's like a little girl and I'm her doctor, they just get excited, whether they're white little girls, Somali little girls, black little girls, it doesn't matter. Like, me being in medicine and where I am right now, it's just an encouragement to, my patient right there. So in terms of racism, maybe it's there. I think maybe I brush it off. I'm not ignoring it, but I just don't pay attention to it because it's not letting me, it's not improving anything in my day, right?
Yeah. So essentially, be aware of it, go in eyes wide open, but don't let it drag you down.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, just do your thing. When you do your job, do what you're meant to do and just keep it moving. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Do we have any more questions?
No, none right now.
All right. So, Dr. Adder, I'm going to close with this. All right. So, when do people seek you out? What do they seek you out for, and how can they seek you out?
So I work in Minnesota, north central part of Minnesota. But then if people want to ask me questions, they can always find me on my Instagram. It's at ask _dr_ada, so ask Dr. Ada. And then you can also find me on YouTube, and you can ask me any question you want on there. Any of my videos, you can just comment below, and you can also send me an email through my YouTube channel or through my Instagram handle. So.
All right. Well, there it is. You heard it from Made in Minnesota.